Hello, I can't tell if anybody's on here or not. This is my first time trying a live Q&A. If somebody's there, send me a comment. Hello, Rowan Price. Thanks for joining. You're the first one on. We'll give everybody a few minutes to see if anyone else joins here. Okay, hello, Bell South 70. Good, as two of us. Maybe I'll give one more minute for people to join in. I know you get I think an alert on your YouTube, so give people a minute to find the link and get on to joining in here. Well, I guess it's only 8:01, but I guess there's no reason we can't begin. I just, I posted this first video of the hull of the StuG III, and it got a lot of views and a lot of questions. And I tried to answer everybody's questions that came up in the chat on YouTube. So I thought, well, maybe I'll try this live Q&A and see if I can get some more questions answered. The hardest ones to answer are questions about people who are wanting to build their own tank. And, I get questions like, can you give me advice or that sort of thing. And it's kind of hard to do that in a, in a brief little comment. There's a lot of, it depends on kind of what your goals are and what your skills are and budget, all kinds of things. So I can offer a lot of advice. This is my second wood tank replica. So I've learned a lot through a number of mistakes over the years. And if you've seen my channel, I also did that styrofoam board Type 95 Hago Japanese tank. And that was a super easy project that I did in a few days, a long weekend, plus another weekend to get it all painted and finally put back together. But anyway, if you got any questions, fire away. In the meantime, I can talk tanks all day long, so I won't run out of stuff to talk about here. But so until I see some questions, I'll just keep talking. Oh, it looks like nobody's on. Yep, everybody dropped off. I've seen other scale tank builders, and a lot of them are 2/5, 40% scale. Is there any particular reason to do 40% over, say, half scale? That's a good question. The first scale builder I ever saw on YouTube, he started posting videos, I think, over 20 years ago, Tankman 101. He built a 40% Sherman and then a 40% M60 patent tank. And I think the reason for 40% is it's just the smallest tank you can build that you can still fit an adult-sized person in it and have enough room to drive it and even maybe shoot a cannon if it's got a rotating turret. So I think that's the biggest reason for 40%. I haven't logged into it in a long time, but there was a website called Scaled Tanks, and you had to request permission to join, and then there's a whole bunch of builders on there that would post information about their builds. And 40% was a pretty common scale there, but there were a lot of 50% scale tanks as well. I think it was probably an even split between 40 and 50. My Sherman that I built 60% scale, which is also kind of unusual. I did that just because kind of a long story, but I I I had to build that in 7 months. I was building it for the 4th of July to do a kind of a neighborhood show, and I knew I wouldn't have time to build a motor and transmission and all that. And I had built before the year before a pedal powered Higgins boat, the landing craft they used in D-Day and Normandy. And so I was surprised at how much weight you can actually push by pedals if you just gear it way down. So I used the pedals for my tank, and I did a mock-up of a 50% scale, and there wasn't enough room to move your feet inside the hull. So I bumped it up to 60% just so you could move your feet around inside there. And at that rate, that size, it was really nice because you could actually fit 3 people in that tank. Actually 4 when it was pedals. You could fit 2 down in the hull and 2 in the turret. And then when I made it motor powered, the 2 transmissions were in the front on either side, so I had to move the driver to the center, so it went down to a 3-man tank. And this one, 40%, it is small. Like when I'm in there, it's like my knees are all the way up underneath the front here, and because it's so low, I'm like almost laying back. The hole from the floor to the roof is about 24 inches high. So I'm 6 foot 1 inches tall. So for me to fit in there, it's pretty tight. You got to be leaned back quite a bit. I mean, that's how the driver is in an Abrams tank, so that's not that unusual, I guess, for driving a tank. But um, yeah, it's really tight. My sons are even taller than me, so I don't know if they'll fit in it or not, but we'll give it a try, I guess. I remember watching videos in the Scale Tanks website as a kid, wanting to build my own tank. Oh, you're talking about Tankman 101, I think. I'd love to build my own, looking at everyone's builds for inspiration and mechanical ideas. Yeah, what I learned, with the Sherman, it was pedal powered, and I knew I wasn't going to have a whole lot of power, so I made the tracks out of wood, and I thought they were plenty strong. I hung about 250 pounds of weights from them just to. I was going to just keep adding weights till they broke, so I knew how strong they were, and it never broke with all the weights I could fit on there. So then I built it, and it would drive in a straight line easy, but it takes so much power to turn a tank because the whole length of the track, there's one point that's pivoting, but everywhere else on the track, it's dragging sideways. So you basically have to think of it as you have to have enough power to push that whole tank sideways across the ground. Um, and so I had to gear it down so much that I kept breaking the track with the pedals. So uh, then I added some casters to take some weight off of the track so they wouldn't have to have so much friction on them. But there's a tremendous amount of stress on the drivetrain and the tracks and the suspension, just to do a turn. To go straight is pretty easy. And in fact, I was telling this to the guys I sold my tank to, because they had problem with it going into gear on one side. And I said, if you only run power to one track and you have the other track in neutral, the tank will still go straight or nearly straight because it so heavily resists wanting to turn at all. So turning a tank is really a lot of stress, and the steering is really complicated as well. Um, so how to do that? This will be this one's going to be electric powered, using the motors from a mobility scooter. Um, so there's some that have a one motor with a differential and a steering handlebar, and there's others that have a joystick and an independent motor for a left and right wheel. So I have one of those with the joystick, and I'm going to see if it has enough power to push this. And because I have that powertrain, I made the tank as small as I can to keep the weight down so that it's got enough power to be able to turn the tank. I have no doubts it'll be able to drive it in a straight line. The question is if it's going to have enough power to turn it. And ideally it does as is. I'll just take the motor. There's like a motor and a gearbox and a wheel all in one assembly. And I can just bolt it into the back and wrap the track around it. But if it doesn't have enough power for that, I'll have to add some more gear reduction Probably have to buy some chain and sprockets to gear it down to a different output shaft. So I'm hoping I don't have to do that, but I'm prepared to if I need to. Yeah, what else we got? Hardest decision I'm trying to make for my eventual build is if I want to go with a belt drive tiller steering like Tankman, or two electric motors, one for each track, or some version of brake steering. Yeah, Tankman's drivetrain was really complicated. I watched his whole build series as well, and he had like this counter rotating gear so that he could go forward and reverse with each track. And if I remember right, he had a belt drive, but then he ended up taking a chain and putting sections of belt along the chain because the belt wasn't strong enough. And it looked like just hours and hours of work to make that transmission work. So, um, well, I guess keep watching the channel and you'll find out how the electric motors work, having those independently powered. So I guess I got two options if it's not powerful enough. I can gear it down and then it'll just have a much lower top speed, or I could upsize the motors. These motors they're about that big. They're about the size of a starter motor on a car. But I don't know how much, raw torque they can really provide. I mean, if I had to go up to like a 1,000-watt motor they make for e-bikes or go-karts, maybe something like that, or to really step up to get motors made for an electric golf cart. That was another thing I thought of, but that's obviously way more expensive. And but if the tank is small and light enough, maybe that's not necessary. And by the way, I'm not looking to take this off road. I'm just looking to be able to drive it up and down the street, up my driveway, and turn it on concrete. So driving it off road would be much more harder on everything because um, skidding the tracks across grass or dirt or whatever is going to obviously grab onto the track a lot more and really make it hard to put a lot more stress on everything. Um, but yeah, I'll show you how I do this. The steering on my Sherman I thought was actually really as easy as you could do it, and it was super easy to drive. I don't know if you saw it or remember, but it was one 12.5 horsepower motor, and the belt was powering two different CVT transmissions. And so the levers would just change the gear ratio of the transmissions to steer it. So if you pulled the sticks all the way back, it had the brakes, and then the farther you went, the engine was just running at a continuous speed like it did in the lawnmower. And the further you push the sticks forward, the faster each track would go. So you just steer like this. And the nice thing about that is it's not using brakes. Anytime you use brakes to steer, if you watch videos of like a Sherman doesn't use brakes to steer, it has brakes, but it's got what's called a control differential, and it actually just changes the gear ratio between the left and right tracks. It has a fixed turning radius. So when they pull one lever all the way back, it just has a constant, I don't know, 30 feet or something turning radius. So it doesn't really slow down when it turns. It only slows down due to the drag of dragging the track sideways. But if you watch a tank with a dual clutch brake system, that takes it has one shaft going to both tracks, and then it can release a clutch so that it no longer provides power to that track. And then after that clutch is fully released, it can apply brakes to that track, and that'll make it turn. But if you see, there's videos of some guys that built a Luke's German tank that's a clutch brake steering, and the thing slows way down when it turns. It pitches forward and slows down a lot. So that you lose a lot of speed. If you're using brakes to steer, you're going to lose a lot of speed. And if you don't have a lot of power to work with, you're going to almost come to a stop to make a turn. It looks like you dropped off at the moment, Bell South, but I'll give you a second to come back in here. Read your next couple of questions. Hardest decision to make from what to, yeah. What voltage and wattage are you going to go with your motors? Or are you still trying to decide? I already have the motors. I don't have them up in the garage, or I'd show them on the camera, but they're 24 volt. Um, it doesn't say on the motor on the label how much wattage they're rated for, but I'm guessing they're about a 350 watt motor. They're not real huge. Like I said, they're about um, that big around on the end and about that long. And then there's a big gearbox on the end. So I'm guessing they're around 350 watts each. So we got 750 watts of power to push this tank, which is not a lot. So, yeah, like I said, that's why I'm trying to keep the weight down. Most of the weight will be the driver and the batteries. That'll weigh more than the rest of the tank, I think, or close to it. Um, and yeah, so since that's part of the reason for this whole build is I already had the mobility scooter. It needed new batteries, so I bought some new batteries for 140 bucks, I think, for a pair of new batteries. But it works great, and it's got a joystick to drive it, so it'll be real easy to just have that joystick mounted in the left side of the hull to drive the tank, and then you have your right hand free to aim and fire the gun. Okay. Any other questions? In the meantime, if you're typing more questions, I'll just keep talking about the next plans here. So I'm gonna install the motors in the back. This was originally the real StuG had drive sprockets in the front, but I don't have room to put the motors in the front. So I'm gonna just make these idler wheels and make kind of a faux sprocket, so it looks like a sprocket, but it won't actually power the track. The motors are gonna be in the back. So I'm going to do that next, get the motors mounted and figured out. And then I need to make the front idler sprocket and the return rollers. There's 3 return rollers on each side. So once I get that done, it'll be ready for tracks. So then I'll have to make the tracks. Those are going to be a belt track similar to what I made on my Sherman, except I got a few differences. I'm going to make the whole thing out of plastic. Track pads and track guides. I used wood for the Sherman, and then I'd cut some chevrons out of plastic so they wouldn't get shredded up on the concrete. I'm just making these out of all plastic for durability, and I don't have to paint them. They're already black plastic. You can kind of see them in the right there on the ground. Those are black plastic 2x4s. They're made, they're landscaping timbers. I got it at Menards, and they're a lot more expensive than wood. I don't remember what they were, 17 bucks for an 8-footer, I think. But yeah, that's with the track pads, and it's got a center track guide that I'll carve out of all that and screw it together onto a conveyor belt, a piece of conveyor belting. So I'll find some used conveyor belting. Conveyor belting is really strong for even less than 1/8 of an inch thick. It can withstand about 7,000 pounds of tension. So that stuff is really strong. It's just a question of making something strong enough to clamp to it so it doesn't move or come loose. Okay, got some more questions. Have you thought about running a conveyor belt for your tracks? Yep, exactly. Yep, that's what I was just talking about. With a wooden or metal track pad and linking the belts together, making a track, perhaps some weight savings. Yeah, that's like I said, my Sherman originally was all wood with some bolts to hold it together. But then I added a conveyor belting for strength because it wasn't strong enough for pedal power, let alone I knew it wasn't going to make it for when I had 12.5 horsepower to push that thing. So um, yeah, that's what I'm going to do here. Some other lessons learned. I made the Sherman suspension was all out of wood, so this suspension's all steel. It's going into a wood hull, but I talked about how to keep the stress off of there. And when this tank is already pretty light, and it's divided up by 12 pairs of wheels, 24 wheels really, but 12 wheel pairs. So there's only going to be about 30 pounds on each wheel pair. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of weight. It's going to be just a question of if it can hold the stress of turning. That's what is really going to be far more stressful than just driving and supporting the weight of the tank. Gun, I still don't know what I'm going to do there. I'm probably not going to do a water balloon just because it's going to be a smaller gun caliber, and the Sherman had a 1.5 inch PVC pipe. I think it was, no, maybe it was 2 inch. Yeah, 2 inch, because 2 inch would have been 60% scale, would have been about right there. And 2 inches, just big enough you could fit a water balloon, and then I put a paper cup in there to seal behind the water balloon, and then compressed air. I don't think this is going to be. This is a 35, or excuse me, a 75 millimeter gun, full scale. So 40% of that is 30 millimeters. So about 1.25 inches is going to be the gun barrel size. And so I'm trying to decide if I'm going to do. There's a Nerf dart that's 30 millimeters in diameter. I can't remember what it's called, Mega XL or something. So I might make my own way to propel that dart a lot faster than a Nerf gun would, and you just use the 30 millimeter darts. Or paintball would be a pretty easy solution, I think. Especially with this mantlet, the gun comes down. If you can see that little plus sign right there, that's where the gun barrel actually comes out, the center of it. So it's got all this space up above that would fit the hopper for paintballs on top. So what do you guys think? Paintball or Nerf? What's the right way to go? The only hesitation I have about paintball, or even airsoft for that matter, is that anybody, bystanders, I would want having eye protection, so that somebody doesn't actually get hit with a stray paintball um, pellet, or whatever you call them. So that makes me a little nervous versus a big Nerf dart. I think is much safer. Oxypropane. I don't know much about that. I know I've seen some people do that as like and maybe not even to shoot anything. So maybe you can answer this for me. Are you talking about to shoot a projectile, or just to make a burst of flame and sound to make it look and sound like it's firing a gun, but not actually shoot anything? Um, if you can send me a link about how to make an oxypropane gun on this, I would be interested in seeing what that looks like. What is the biggest change, or are you making between Sherman and StuG? The scale is a big one. The electric drive is the other big one. The Sherman went from pedal power to a 12.5 horsepower gasoline motor and 2 transmissions to steer it. The electric drive is going to simplify, I hope, if it works, the steering a lot. I won't have to build a whole transmission and control system and brakes and all that stuff. I bought 2 riding lawnmowers and took them apart and welded together a bunch of brackets to make all that work. And then I had to weld both the the differentials in the 2 axles of the lawnmowers. And that was quite a lot of work. So I'm again trying to get this done by July. And so I want to have, I wanted to make the drivetrain simple. If you're building your own tank, make it simple or it'll never get done. I know I don't want a tank that's going to take me 2 years. That's too long to get to actually enjoy it. I enjoy building it a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I need to stay motivated and keep moving. Get it towards progress, towards something that we can use and show to the public, to my neighbors and friends and family. Every 4th of July, we do a big battle reenactment kind of thing in our neighborhood. So I got a hard deadline. Otherwise, it's a mostly wood hull, and I'm gonna use in the Sherman. I used some Kindles. My kids had these Kindles they didn't use anymore, so it was a screen and a camera in one. On this, I bought a 7-inch display for like $30, and 2 cameras for $12 each. So you'll sit in there, and then you can toggle between the 2 cameras. So I'll have 1 camera in the cupola for just viewing, and then 1 camera in the gun mantlet for aiming the gun. So you'll be totally inside the tank. You won't have any direct vision. Approximate OMC. Remember, I got a bunch more questions here coming in. This is exciting, guys. Didn't remember off the top of my head if the hull of the StuG all wood or some sort of angle metal framework supporting the suspension and hull structure. The StuG right now is all wood. Just the suspension arms are steel. So in the last video I posted just a week or so ago, it's a 1/2 inch thick steel bar. I bent to put 2 bends into it and welded a bracket to hold the spring on there. And that's steel. Right now, everything else is wood. but I will have to build a frame to put the motors in the back, a metal frame. Um, yeah. What is the approximate price of wood? So far, I got about 80 bucks into this in wood. And I'm keeping track of every penny I spend on it and every hour I spend building on it. So at the end, I can show you how much it cost me to build it. And for the things I didn't buy, like the mobility scooter, I'll put in a ballpark of what that would cost so that you can get an idea if you wanted to duplicate this project, what's the dollars and hours you got to spend to make this happen. Wood's, yeah, wood's gotten a lot more expensive since I did my Sherman, but this is 1/4 inch plywood, which isn't too bad. I think it was like 13 bucks a sheet for a 4x8 sheet plywood. And I got I think 3 sheets I bought for this, plus 1 sheet of 3/8 for the floor. Um, Wood is not even close to the highest cost item. I'll spend more on the conveyor belts than I did on the wood. I spent more on the batteries, the 2 batteries, than I will on the wood. I spent more on the plastic tracks, the plastic material to make the tracks than I did on wood. So wood is not the biggest consideration. Okay, the propane, oxypropane is to make noise. You have it on your tank. All right, Panzer Hauptmann, I will check out your channel. That's cool. Thanks for joining my live chat and sharing that with me. I'm excited to see how you do that and what it looks like. Can you get a can of expanding foam and make a mold of a projectile and go air cannon? Oh, okay. Yep. So the Sherman was, it was a compressed air powered cannon. It would shoot anything you would stick in there as long as it would get a decent seal inside the barrel. So yeah, I never thought of using expanding foam, but that would be pretty easy, right? You could um, maybe take a piece of PVC pipe, the same as your gun barrel material, and grind it to a sharp edge and shove a piece of foam in there, or to cut it to size, or maybe I don't know if you sprayed it into there, if it would get glued in there and you can't get it out. I don't know, but or it would get all broken up trying to push it out, or if you apply something to inside of the barrel so it doesn't stick to it. I don't know. I guess there's some trial and error to figure out how to make that, but that's a good idea. You need 2 solenoids, a spark plug, and a welding hoses for the oxypropane gun. Okay. Sounds like you need another worker. Yeah. Yeah, my kids are all grown and not helping me with the tank. They help me with the Sherman a little bit here and there with painting mostly and a few things, but yeah, this is a one-man show now. Are you going to cover the hull with resin? I'm guessing you're talking about Zimmerit. I wasn't planning to do a Zimmerit coating like they did on the real ones. Um, that wasn't done universally. I think I remember, if I remember right, they started applying Zimmerit in 44 and then stopped within less than a year. The irony was that Germany and Japan were the only nations that used magnetic anti-tank weapons. And Germany, so they put this paste on there to protect their tanks from these magnetic mines, because they assumed their enemies would do it because they did it. So no, I'm not planning to do that. But what I am going to do, though, is I bought a big tub of wood filler. So when the woodwork is all done, I'll fill in all the seams. There's like this front piece. I don't know if you can see in the camera there, but it's splintered up a little bit where I cut some of the edges. So I'll fill all the edges and all the nail staple holes with wood filler and go over with a sander and make it look, to hide all of that stuff, because obviously that'll come out. I'll paint it with flat paint to try and hide the imperfections as well, but I'm not planning on doing a Zimmerit type of coating. 80 bucks. Yeah, like I said, the wood was not the main expense here. Do you have a Discord? No, I don't. I guess I'm too old. I don't know what I know my kids have talked about Discord, but I don't really know what it is or how to use it. Maybe I'll ask my kids if that would be helpful for me to have something like that. High impact wood resin would make it stronger and waterproof. Okay, so you're not talking about a Zimmerit coating, just something to make it waterproof and stronger. Okay, I haven't looked into that, so I didn't plan to do that. I guess it comes down to cost and time, if it's worth doing. Um, but yeah, I guess we'll see. Not a technical question, but something casual. Any reason you decided to build a StuG? Was it because a casemate is easier to build than a hull and separate turret, or just like StuGs? Well, it's a little of both. Yeah, at this scale, you wouldn't be able to turn around in a turret anyway. You'd be able to rotate it. It's so cramped in there. You'd be able to only be able to rotate it about 15 degrees either way, either direction anyway. And so I thought that it just made the operating, the aiming of the gun would be a lot easier if you just have a handle in there and it's on a swivel, so you can point and shoot. So I was looking at what can I do that's a casemate, a tank destroyer type of layout, and I like the StuG because most people don't know that it's the most produced armored fighting vehicle that Germany made in World War II. I think almost 11,000 of them they built, which is more than any tank they made. I did some research on the efficiency of the tank. So it doesn't have the highest kill to loss ratio of any German vehicle, but if you look at and those numbers are really estimates. It's hard to tell how accurate they are. But if you look at kills, I did a calculation of kills, how many tanks they destroyed compared to the cost, the money that they spent to build the tank. So in that metric, that's an efficiency metric. From that metric, it's the most efficient armored fighting vehicle that Germany had. It for the number of tanks it killed and the amount of what it cost Germany to build, these were far more efficient than Tiger, King Tiger, Panther, Jagdpanther, whatever else you can think of. That the most common tanks I could think of. I tried to research what's the number of kills that Panthers were credited with. Tiger 1, Tiger 2, and a few others, and then what was the cost. And this was by far the most efficient one. So it's my favorite one for that reason. I love your channel. Just a question, would you actually be able to fit in the StuG? Yes, I can fit in it. And what would the next tank you would be able to? Well, why don't I show you? Here we go. Can I fit in the tank? This is one of Nick Baran's things. Does the Chieftain fit? So here we go. You can't see from there, but the seat back is I have to set it up vertically, and then as I go in there, I have to lower it down behind me. So I climb in here, and then I got to sit down and cross my legs. So my legs are crossed right in front of me, and then I got to scooch forward until my knees are up against the front of the hull. Seat back down. It's a process, and then I'm in. Turn the up, and close that thing. And we're done. But it's tight. So there you go. Adult can fit. Oh, I just splintered the edge there. That was some putty. All right. Well, the next tank I would build, I'm still debating. I'm hoping actually, big news, to get 2 tanks built by 4th of July, depending on how fast this one goes. So the other one would be American. And I've been searching for a kind of a story behind an American tank against a StuG, and I haven't found any good ones there. So I watched a video the other day from my favorite YouTuber is the Fat Electrician, and he did a video about Audie Murphy, and when he got on the back of an M10 Wolverine and held off some Germans for like an hour in the Battle of the Colmar Pocket. And in his video, he said that there were 6 tanks that were coming up against 2 M10s. And then I did some more research, and somebody said it was, and then another account said it was tank destroyers, and I thought, maybe it was StuGs, and I should build some M10 tank destroyers to fight this. And then I read another account that said it was Panthers, and that made the most sense because they kept saying that these M10 Wolverines were hitting these tanks, and that shots were all bouncing off. And I think an M10 can penetrate the front armor of a StuG, but yeah, not a Panther. So it was probably Panthers. So that story doesn't quite fit either. So I'm still researching a story. M10 tank destroyer would be probably an easy one to build out of wood because it's one of the very few American tanks that has all flat sides. So there's a very good chance I'll build an M10 and try to come up with a story to tell for 4th of July. My daughter really wants me to build an M3 Lee. She just thinks they're so cool looking. They're so tall, which is a liability for a tank, but she just thinks they're the coolest looking tank ever made. So I thought really hard about building an M3 Lee, but M3 Lee, there were StuGs in North Africa, but they were the D or F8 from what I've read. So this is the version right before the G. So a StuG G never came up against an M3 Lee. So that wouldn't be that would be a total fiction. But hey, wait, why not? I can say it's fiction and just have fun with it. Let me catch up on some questions here. Oh, good Lord, that must be cramped. It's not as bad. It's hard to get into. Once you're in there, it's not bad. I got enough room I got elbow room. It's pretty wide. I got enough room to move and steer where I plan to put the controls and reach up to my left and turn the cupola, and the gun manlet is in front a little to the right. So, but yeah, it's pretty tight. Oh, bug things on fire. I forgot to do the how fast can I get out? That would have been a good one. Maybe I'll do that for one of my future videos. Thanks for the tip. M3 Stuart would fit that role. True. M3 Stuart was very common in North Africa. I wonder if I would be able to fit into a 40% scale Stuart. Those are pretty tall. Obviously shorter and narrower than a StuG by a lot, but taller. So that might be a possibility. The M3 Stuart suspension is harder to replicate because they had the two VVSS bogies and then the one trailing arm suspension. So it's two different types of suspensions I'd have to design. I've looked at building a Stuart before, but that's a good idea to kind of give that another thought. You should build a modified version of your Sherman and make a slightly smaller M22. Well, I don't have the Sherman anymore. I sold that to CSR Productions a couple of years ago now. Build a modified version. Yeah, okay. And make a slightly smaller M22. Yeah, the M22 is kind of the same footprint as the Stuart, but a lot lower profile. So I really think an M22 would not be able to fit into at this scale. This is really the smallest thing I could make and still fit inside. Yeah, 76 Sherman would be a good one. That would be a duel that I'm sure happened in northern or in Western Europe. It's just a matter of finding a story or what battle that occurred. What's the largest tank battle was? I can't think of it at the moment. It was a town in France, obviously, but anyway. When I was stationed at Fort Stewart in Georgia, Audie Murphy had a statue and a place in the base, on the base museum. Oh, cool. I know he was from Texas, and I'm not military. I don't know what Fort Stewart is, but I'm guessing it's a, well, no, the Armor and Cavalry Museum is in Georgia. Oh yeah, you said Georgia, but it's in, it's not Fort Stewart. I can't remember what it's called, but that's cool. He was probably one of the most famous guys from World War II. Hey, would fit in one though. Yes, I would fit in a 76 Sherman. That's a good point. I think they're roughly the same width as a StuG, but obviously much taller. So that would be a good option. and Shermans were much more widely used, obviously most widely used yeah, by America. So yeah. T-38 Hetzer. Now that was yes, definitely in the running. The Hetzer is also a really cool tank I like a lot, and the hull would have been simpler to build, right? There's a lot fewer facets of the Hetzer hull. The Hetzer would have been a little bit more difficult because the wheels are so tall. Those wheels are like 30 inches tall. And so at scale, maybe that's 13 inches. And I wasn't quite sure how I looked at the Hetzer. It's a cool looking tank. One of my favorites. So um, I think it's a little smaller than the StuG, right? Yeah, because it's based on the Czech 38T tank. I mean, they widened it and lengthened it, I think, to make it into a Hetzer, but it's a pretty small tank compared to. I actually saw one in person. I was in Bastogne at the Bastogne War Museum a few years ago, and they have a war museum there, and they have a real Hetzer inside their museum. So they're not very big. I mean, they're a lot smaller than a Sherman. So they're would probably be a tight fit as well. Kursk, yeah, that was the largest that was the western or the Eastern Front. I was thinking of Western Front, the largest tank battle involving the United States. Um, Ericourt, the Battle of Ericourt in France was the largest U.S. tank versus German tank battle. I think America destroyed over 200 German tanks in that one. But yeah, that's much smaller compared to anything that happened on the Eastern Front. Because of its status as largest, heaviest tank built, it should give plenty of room at 2/5 scale, and its shape is simple, maybe a mouse. Yeah, a mouse would be awesome, but that's another German tank. I already have a German vehicle. And mouse, yeah, they had one running, right? Maybe two hulls built, and obviously it would be roomy. That would probably, I mean, what were those? Those were over 30 feet long, I think. So yeah, that would be, you could probably still stand up in that thing. Bike wheels with covers on them. Oh, for the Hetzer. Yeah, that would probably work. Um, I don't know, with, like I said, with the steering, you'd have a lot of lateral forces, and a taller bike wheel, it'd have to be able to stand that bending stress on the bottom of the wheel and through the spokes, but it's probably strong enough. That would have been an option, yeah, to make some sort of cover to mimic the kind of cone-shaped wheels of the Hetzer. That would have been cool. Will you be able to ride in the tank? If you're talking about this one, you must have missed it. I just got into this tank a few minutes ago. I did my whole Chieftain, will the Chieftain fit? 2 hulls and a turret. Hillbro 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not sure what you're talking about here. 2 hulls and a turret. Cromwell, maybe. Yeah, that's a British tank, though. I want to do something American. It is for the 4th of July, which is, American holiday. KV2. KV2 is a cool tank. And those would be easier to build. But again, a Russian tank. KV2 never fought against an American tank, as far as I can remember, unless it was somebody else using an American tank, maybe. M24 Chaffee might have fought the StuG. Yeah, those were used late in the war. It's very possible. Had that 75 millimeter gun. And a Chaffee would be, they're smaller than a Sherman, probably a little smaller than a StuG, but maybe a little taller. That might work. Praying mantis tank would be funny. Yeah. That's built on the Cardin Lloyd carrier, though. Those things are way smaller than a tank. A Cardin Lloyd carrier is smaller than a car. Those I would definitely not fit into. The mouse chat's delayed. Oh, okay. All right. Good luck. My StuG is one of the Band of Brothers StuGs. It's been fun owning. You own the StuG that was in Band of Brothers? That's amazing. That was I think it was a replica based on some German, not German, British armored personnel carriers, right? But it's a pretty good replica. So it's probably a runner, and you get to drive it occasionally. That's incredible. FV432 is the chassis they use for the StuG. Cool. So does that have 6 wheels on each side, or is it only 5? Maybe that's how you can tell that's a giveaway if it's a replica. With your daughter liking the M3 Lee, perhaps build an M7 Priest, open top howitzer SPG. Yeah, they used the Priest throughout the whole war. In fact, those were used in the Battle of Ericourt that I mentioned earlier. Um, so that, yeah, that's worth considering. M26. The M26 is got a lot of weird shapes. That would be a tough one to make out of wood. The Pershing, right? Um, okay, 2 FV432s were cut and put together. Boy, that sounds like a project. It's amazing that was easier than finding a StuG to restore. But I guess you got much more reliable running gear in a more slightly more modern chassis, and maybe more parts availability to keep it running. That's cool. I'm honored to have an actual owner of the StuG replica that was in Band of Brothers. Wow, what a what a brag. That's impressive. Very excited to see this finished. Keep up the good work. Thanks. Yeah, I've got to keep progress on it a little bit every week to keep it moving and keep it on schedule. Like I said, I got to get this done by. I want to get this one done by April or May. So I've got. There'll be a little bit of overlap with starting a second tank, but I want to take a few lessons learned from this one before I start the next one. Like for example, if the electric drivetrain works. So that's why I'm going to do that next, drivetrain and the tracks. Why StuG? Hey Dennis, that question was asked a few minutes ago as well, but I'll just say it real briefly. At this scale, you can't really sit in there and operate a turret because you got no way to turn your body around. You're just in there too tight. So StuG has just the gun. I could mount some kind of gun. I haven't decided what kind of gun to put in here yet, but and then just with a limited traverse to aim it. And I like the StuG because it was a really the most widely used armored fighting vehicle from Germany. Well, fully tracked armored fighting vehicle from Germany, and their most efficient. I argued their most efficient tank destroyer. Potato cannon. Yep. Potato cannons are very unsafe though. I mentioned I didn't know if I wanted to use a paintball gun because I wouldn't want to hit somebody's in the eye with a paintball. A potato cannon can really hurt somebody, but yeah, that would certainly pack a punch, and to be able to knock through, it would penetrate the 1/4-inch plywood armor of of another tank. So that would be one thing, but I'll probably stay away from that for safety. Nerf is a little more my speed for the crowds I'm entertaining, I think. Water balloons was what the Sherman had. So water balloons for the Sherman, and then the Hago had it shot cheese balls. Remember that? Or if you saw my videos of the Hago. Could an M18 work? Yeah, I talked about doing an M10. That was my first one I talked about at the beginning or earlier in this chat. So an M10 would be probably the easiest because it's the only tank I can think of that had no curves really. It's got that pentagon turret and flat surfaces, a few maybe some very minor curves around the mantlet, but overall that would probably be, as far as building out of plywood, the M10 is probably my front runner right now. M18 is similar. Yeah, that's mostly flat as well. I was just thinking about the suspension. If the M18 would be the one of the differences is wheels get much more expensive very rapidly when you go up. So these wheels I bought for this StuG, they're 8-inch diameter wheels, which is the correct scale. The original ones are about 20 inches tall. And I got these wheels for $2 each. If you go up to a 10-inch wheel, you're starting at about $8 each. And when you got to buy 36 of the things, it adds up. And I don't know what size the wheels are on an M18, but I'd have to buy. I think it's got 5 road wheel pairs per side, right? So that'd be 40 wheel, or no, 20 wheels. 5 times 4 would be 20 wheels I'd have to buy. So depending on what size they are, that might get kind of expensive to buy all the wheels for that. The Sherman had 20-inch wheels also, so I would use the same 8-inch wheels and just stack them side by side for the VVSS suspension, and it would still be pretty cheap. Nerf grenade things like the big purple ones. Okay, I'll have to look into that. I don't. Do those just shoot with compressed air? But like I said, I think it's called the Mega XL Dart is 30 millimeters, which is the exact scale diameter caliber of the 75 millimeter gun. M36 would be another one. It's the same hull, I believe, as the M10, right? Just has the turret that mounts the 90 millimeter gun instead of the 3-inch gun. Flamethrower Stewart, Satan, or Sherman Crocodile. Did they? I know that the flamethrowers were used quite a bit in the Pacific. I can't remember if they used flamethrowers very much in Europe. I'm sure they did. And I've heard of the what is it called, the Churchill crocodile that was a flamethrower. So they obviously planned to use flamethrowers in Europe as well. Boy, you guys are really coming up with lots of ideas of more tanks to build. This is fun. That's the fun part, isn't it? Just kind of imagining what would be fun to build and to see come to life. That's one of the things I enjoy about this hobby is it forces me to learn so much. In order to build a StuG, I researched the heck out of them, and I know more than I knew of them and a few specs and details. But when I decided to build one, I learned tons more. And I searched, watched YouTube videos and read some World War II books looking for a story. And in doing that, it forced me to learn a lot. So this is just kind of forcing me to learn history, which I enjoy anyway. I don't need to be forced to, I guess. I don't want to put it that way, but it just kind of immerses you into learning history, which is fun. If you could make any tank with no difficulty and infinite money, what would you make? That's tough. I think probably have to go with the Sherman. The Sherman Jumbo I chose because that was my favorite tank from World War II. And so to build one full scale that runs and can actually drive off road and stuff like that would be really cool. What about a Pershing? Yeah, the M26 Pershing has a much more complex hull. It was a cast hull that had, some different shapes to fit the driver at a lower profile, and the bow gunner was kind of cast into it. And I'm looking for hulls that are made with flat surfaces. And German tanks are they use a lot fewer castings, so they're almost all made from flat armored plates. Of course, I had a couple conversations about the StuG G having a cast mantlet, the Salkopf cast mantlet instead of the block-shaped mantlet. And from the research I can find, they were both used in the StuG III G. They planned it for the Salkopf, but they had shortages, and so they built the trapezoid-shaped one kind of intermittently throughout the war. In fact, there were two factories, and one built about 8,000 of them, or maybe it was about 6,000 of them, the majority of them. And another factory built only about 2,000 or 2,500, and that factory used only the trapezoid mantlet. But anyway, I'm getting kind of off on a tangent. German tanks generally used mostly flat plates that were welded together or bolted together. So those are much easier to build from plywood. I've never worked with fiberglass or other materials where you can make curved shapes very easily. I mean, I did make the curve around the cupola there, but I did that by making a cut halfway through the depth of the wood every half inch, and then soaking it in water and then wrapping it and clamping it around the top. So that wasn't too difficult. Would you design and build a tank of your own design? Probably not. Oh, I skipped one. An I3. Is that I3? What's an I3? Or is that L3? I still don't know. Fletching freight. What's an L3 or I3? We'll come back to that. Would I design and build a tank of my own design? Probably not. I mean, these are a bit of my own design. I was telling a friend of mine that the fun thing about this is that every day I work on this thing, I'm solving engineering problems, and that's what I enjoy. I mean, it resembles a real tank, but how it actually functions is different due to, I'm trying to do this as cheap as possible, and still have it look, recognizable, instantly recognizable. It's not a precise scale modeler. I know some people go to really great lengths and great detail. I don't go to really insane detail, but I hope it's instantly recognizable as a StuG, and I try to make it as accurate as I can, but with a reasonable cost and being able to build it in a short time frame. So I would want to build something that people recognize and that they know stuff about, and can relate to it, because it's a lot more interesting to people, I think, to see a tank that they've read about or seen, and to see it in real life is just it's much more exciting when it's something you've known about, and then to get to see one in real life is pretty cool. M6A4 T1E1 might work for space, but a little hard to make. Yeah, now I did T1E1. Now you put a slash in there. Are you talking about two different? Yeah, no, that's is that the M6 heavy tank A4 T1E1? Is that the one that had the electric drive system in it? I can't remember the sub variants of the M6, but yeah, that would be much bigger. But again, those were standardized, and that's why it's M6. But they were never shipped over to Europe, so they were never used in combat, as far as I know. So there's no stories to work with there. You're deep in the project when you're reading books. Well, I'm around since before the YouTube days when books was your only option. Would you make a two-man tank? Well, the Sherman was a three-man tank. So, or do you mean something that was originally a two-man tank, like an FT or a Matilda 1, right? Those are originally two-man tanks. I've thought about World War I tanks. The hard part there was there weren't any American World War tanks. America used the FT and the French tanks, and they then afterwards went in with the Allies to build the Mark 8 Liberty, but that was never used, obviously. So that's why I kind of stayed away from World War I tanks at this point. What kind of engine will you use in the StuG? I did talk about that. So just briefly, I have a electric mobility scooter, and it's the type that has independent motors for the left and right wheels and a joystick to drive it. So they're pretty big motors, 24 volts. I don't know the wattage. Like I said, I'm guessing about 350 watts probably per motor. So I'm hoping it's got enough power. I know it'll drive this thing up and down the street. It's a question of if it'll have enough power to be able to turn it. So we'll see. If it's not powerful enough, I'll either upsize the motors or add some gear reduction to get the torque it needs to turn the tank. L333. Oh yeah, the little cockroach tank. Yeah, those are probably as tight as this at full scale. So that would be a full scale option. Yeah, I've seen those. They're pretty cool little tanks. I think they have the suspension of a Cardin Lloyd carrier, right? Or it's maybe a knockoff from that. T1E1. I actually my first tank I started building was a full scale steel T1E6 American light. I got all the suspension done, and then I realized it was going to take me another 2 years to finish it. So that's when I switched gears and started working on the Sherman. I do have a video about showing the suspension I made for the T1E6 if you want to check my channel. The suspension's done. All the components, are built. the radius arms and the axles, and I bought one pair of wheels. I didn't buy all the wheels. It has 8 pairs of road wheels per side, so 32 wheels altogether would have cost I think around $1,400. So I didn't pull the trigger on those, but I got that ready to go if I ever want to go back to building a full-size steel tank. I got the suspension already done. You can make the Mark IV. Yeah, that's I play a little bit of World of Tanks, and it drives me nuts that the very first tank battle in history are not in the game. The Mark IV and the A7V. Come on, put those in the game. World of Tanks. Scale-wise, driver and gunner. Scale-wise, driver and gunner. Wartang, I'm not sure what you mean. You're probably referring to a 2-man tank, scale-wise, driver and gunner. Well, I'm wondering if the M3 Lee at this scale would be big enough to fit 2. The 75 millimeter gun is on the right side of the hull, and the turret is on the left side. It might be big enough to fit 2 people in the M3 Lee, so you could have a driver and a gunner. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how much time I've got, because that would be a more ambitious project than the M10. Ever plan on making a post-war Cold War tank, or just sticking with World War II? I don't know if I ever will go to Cold War. There's certainly a lot of cool stuff there as well. My nephews wanted me to build an Abrams, and I told them the only problem with that is if I scaled it down at all, I don't know how you'd fit in there fit a driver in there in the hull. It would be obviously a one-man tank, but they're just so low profile that scaling it down very much makes it too low to be able to sit in. It would be lower than this at 60% scale. I think it would be low profile than this StuG here. Again, the World War II German tanks are probably the easiest to build out of plywood because you've got all the flat surfaces to work with. I have to go, but your channel videos are always the highlight of my day. Keep up the awesome work. Thanks, Ghost Saber. I appreciate it. It's fun to get comments from everybody and encouragement, I guess, on this project. So that's why I wanted to do this live Q&A and have a little bit of interaction. It's been fun. Thanks everybody who had time to join in on the chat today. Got a lot of good ideas from you guys. I want to check out that propane cannon concept from one of you guys. I got some thoughts, ideas about other tanks to do, and not only just what my thoughts are, kind of confirming that, but getting input from other people in the community about what would be cool to see. So that helps me a lot to hear about what other tanks you guys like. Could make the Mark IV. Yep. Panzer IV would be or no, I'm sorry, you're probably talking about the World War I Mark IV British tank there. I don't know if interested by making a file for a World War II tank shell loading mechanism that shoots. Of course I'm interested. A STL file, so that's a drawing format. I think I have a 2D drawing program, so I don't know if I have something that can read that. So I'd have to find some software to read that. But I'm curious what that looks like. Shoots what? Bye, Fletching Freight. Thanks for joining. 3D printer file. Oh, I don't have a 3D printer, but I think my daughter just bought one. Okay, interesting. Have you ever considered making a Tiger? Of course. A Tiger those things are just awesome. Probably my favorite, best looking tank of all time is the Tiger. They're just, they don't have the sloped armor and all that, but they're just so cool looking. I feel like it would have been less challenging angles because it kind of looks like a box. Yep. It would have. A Tiger has 48 wheels. That's the only reason I haven't considered doing a Tiger. It would cost a lot to build a suspension and wheels for that Tiger. But the hull would be easier. But like I pointed out with the StuG, the wood is not the most expensive part. It's the tracks and the suspension and the drivetrain. And so the bigger the wheels they go, it gets exponentially more expensive. And the Tiger has so many wheels. Now I could cheat on that a little bit. The Tiger had 3 wheels per axle, and I guess the later ones, when they went with the lower rubber design tires, maybe they went to only um, 2 per axle, like the Panther. I'm not quite sure. I can't remember. But I was just thinking 48 wheels. I can't. That's a lot. Anything that can fit in the shell will shoot. Okay, so does it use compressed air? I like the King Tiger. King Tiger is awesome. 48, dang, yeah. 8 axles, 3 wheels per axle. 8 axles per side, 3 wheels per axle. That you can find a picture um, on the internet of a Tiger looking at the bottom of it with all the wheels. It's very impressive. Would you consider a T-3485? Uh, Probably not, just because I can't figure a scenario where I would put a Russian tank into a 4th of July event. You know what I mean? That's my main motivation for this, is to have a public event where people come and see these things, and we tell a story. I like the tank. It's a cool looking tank. Um, but I can't see where I would build a T-3485. I mean, they did fight against American Shermans and Pershings in Korea, so that might be a possibility, I guess. FV 4005. Yeah, those are cool. It's British. Uh, I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with any stories, battle stories of the F 4005, FV 4005. I know what it is. Huge, huge gun, British tank, I believe, if I'm thinking of the right thing. Um, yes, compressed air. Okay, so you have something that shoots anything with compressed air. Well, that was what my balloon gun had, a water balloon gun for the Sherman. It would shoot anything that would seal in the barrel. But the loading was what was the hardest part about that water balloon cannon. I didn't ever take the time to design a breech block type of mechanism. So I just had the PVC cap that you have to unscrew, put in a balloon, put in a paper cup, and then you'd have to ram it past the T fitting where the compressed air came in, and then screw the cap back in. So it took a good 5 or 6, 10 seconds sometimes to reload that one. So having some sort of faster loading mechanism would be cool. Do you have space for all your tanks in your garage? Yes, I only have the one right now. The Sherman I sold, the Hago I crushed with the Sherman before I sold the Sherman. So now I just have the StuG. So you can see I got a 3-car garage, 2 cars, and then a stall for the tank. I always wanted to build a Panzer II. One of my favorite tanks. I like how it has leaf spring suspension for road wheels, so I always imagine using smaller trailer leaves. Yeah, the Panzer II is cool. I should have got a drink of water. I've been talking for an hour here. Yeah, the trailer, I bought some trailer leaf springs for my T1E6 suspension. Trailer leaf springs are incredibly stiff. They're designed for like an inch and a half of travel. So they make them really stiff because the assumption is there's not people riding in your trailer. So it doesn't have to be comfortable. It just has to not break or bend the frame. So building something you have to ride in out of trailer springs would be rough. It'll either be really stiff or not have, you'll overload the suspension and compress it too much if you overload it. Always wanted, yeah, Panzer II, breech block with shells. Cool. Dizzy Man, I'm interested to see that. I don't know how, I'll have to talk to my daughter about what software she would recommend for viewing these files. What about making Hellcat? Yep. That was one option we talked about earlier in this Q&A. Hellcat is similar to an M10, where it's got mostly flat surfaces. There are some curves of the turret that wouldn't be too hard to build, though. So that would be an option. I think, it may come down to which suspension is easier and cheaper to build, the M18 or the M10. Wanting to build a Sherman based off your videos. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Like I said, I would just say concentrating on, for your first one, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to want to do all kinds of thing. I was tempted to do a lot of things to make it, more accurate, more detailed, and all these kinds of things. And you've got to resist that temptation all the time and focus on this is what worked for me anyway. Everybody, you got different levels of motivation and budget and skills out there. So for me, it was important to keep the project moving and get it done in less than a year. Otherwise, it would have been hard to keep momentum for a project that takes much longer than that. So yeah, I would say wait and see how this electric drivetrain goes. I don't know if anybody tried these motors that I'm going to try for this. If this is strong enough, it's going to way simplify, excuse me, how to make this thing drivable. The Sherman would have required way more power because it was just really a lot heavier. It weighed I think 840 pounds before I put a motor and transmissions in it when it was a pedal tank. How could I send them to you when they are done? Good question. Maybe I can get you maybe this is what Discord is for. I don't know. I've never used Discord. Maybe I can send you a link to a Google Drive somehow. I don't know. I don't know what's the right way to share information like that. Maybe I can put yeah, I don't know. I'll have to ask around how we can share files. Would you try to make another Japanese tank? I know you crushed the other one. Yeah, the Hago, it was a cool little tank, but it was a foam board and it used the mobility scooter that I'm going to use for the StuG. So it didn't cost that much to build. It didn't take that long to build, so it was fun, but I didn't have space to store the Hago and the Sherman, so that's why I crushed it. I don't know if I'll make another one. Maybe. The Hago was the most produced Japanese tank. They weren't known really for building tanks. So I don't know what I would build a Japanese besides the Hago. But yeah, that might be an option. Keep it simple. Exactly, Dizzy Man. That's what I'm saying. You've got to keep it simple or it will never get done. Ever thought about creating a Patreon? Yeah, I don't know. Is that so you can get donations or something? I'm not sure. I've heard of people talk about Patreon, but I don't know anything about it really. So no, I haven't really thought about creating one. I feel like it would be cool to have both of them at the 4th of July event. Both, Japanese and German and American. More tanks would always be more cool. So I agree. All right, you guys got any more questions? Boy, this went on a bit longer than I was imagining. So it's been fun. I got a lot of ideas. I got to check out the propane cannon idea, and I got to see how I can view Dizzy Man's 3D files for a breach block with shooting shells with compressed air. If you're kind enough to share that with me, that would be really cool. Mini Jeep, yeah, you can buy those on Amazon, I think, or Temu or whatever, some of those sites. So those are already readily available, but those are cool. That maybe those are even the right scale to those little mini Jeeps you can buy. I'm new to your channel. How many people can this fit? How many can the Jumbo Sherman fit? This fits one. I got into it at the beginning of the video, or maybe 15 minutes into the video of this Q&A, I mean. So this is a one-man tank. The Sherman would fit 3. When it was powered by the motor, it had the driver down in the hull and 2 in the turret. How often are you shooting for video updates? I'm hoping to do, when I did the Sherman, I was just kind of doing an update about once a week with here's where I'm at, and I'm trying to group it together into like functional groups of the tank. So I did the hull, then I did the suspension. Next, I'll do the drivetrain. So I'm going to wait until I get enough content to make it a complete something to show instead of just I bolted these two pieces together and it's not really anything complete yet. So it depends on how long it takes me to get the next step. With the holidays, I'm not sure how much time I'll have to work on it over the next 2 weeks here. I'm hoping to get something out about every 2 weeks just because I need to keep making progress on it. So I hope you'll see something from me at least every 2 weeks. If I can find a way to get them to you and show you how it works, that would be cool. I agree, Dizzy Man. Let's. I can at least send you a YouTube reply if I come up with some way to do that. James Buchanan, will you do more QAs in the future? I really like to talk to you and ask about your amazing creations. Yeah, this I kind of did this as an experiment. I never did a Q&A. This is my first one, and it's been fun to talk to you all and get your questions and input. So I think I probably will do another one. I won't do it as often as the build updates, but maybe when I'm starting to get closer to starting a second tank, I'll do a Q&A and give you maybe some of my thoughts at the time on what I'm thinking, and we can talk through that. And of course, I'll have a lot more progress to talk about with the StuG. And so yeah, I think I'll probably do another one. I just won't do them as often. Maybe in a couple months we'll do another one. Zoom work. Yeah, I don't know. Zoom, you needed like an email or a phone number to do that, I think. So I'd have to find a way to get you my information. I don't want to just post it on YouTube where anybody can have my phone number. That's the tricky part here. Dizzy Man. Okay, well, I think that's about it for me for tonight. Thanks for staying on. I don't know if some of you are on the East Coast. It's getting a little bit late for you, but I really enjoyed chatting with you all. It'd be fun if this could be like a Zoom where I could, hear your voices and stuff like that too. I'm not quite sure how to do that. At least I know you can't do it through YouTube, but anyway, this has been fun to get a little bit of interaction with some of you guys who like my channel. It's fun um, to hear from you guys. Just need to make a room, give whoever you want to join it the room code. Okay. Okay. Let me figure out how to do that. This week's pretty busy, and next week as well. So it might be a couple weeks before I have a chance to schedule something like that, Dizzy Man. But I won't forget. That's a pretty interesting thing. And since I have a couple ideas floating around in my head, but no plan on the gun yet. If you've got a solution that you're willing to share with me, that would be awesome. Benji Sauer, you're Aussie. What time is it in over there? It's got to be, I guess, sometime in the morning. Thanks for joining early on your Monday morning. Setting a Discord server would be a good idea. Okay, I'll talk to my kids. My daughter has a Discord, so I'll talk to her about how to do that and how to share it with you. Really like your project. Good luck. I think you're doing a great job. Thanks, Vortang. I got a lot of great feedback. A lot of people were glad after I was dark for almost 3 years, I think. I got a lot of comments that people were happy to see another project. So that was fun to get all that feedback. Thanks for being here. Good night and happy holidays from VA. All right. Good night. Thanks for joining. Any other last questions? I'll give you about another 15 seconds here, and then I'm going to sign off. Good night from Louisiana. All right. Maybe I should have opened with that. Where are y'all from? I'm in Nebraska. I think I've mentioned that in a couple of my videos. Right in the middle of the country. Oh, the countdown, the Jeopardy music for the countdown. California. All right. So a little bit early for busy, man. I mean, maybe late enough that you're off work at least, huh? Goodbye, mate. All right. Okay. Well, I'm gonna sign off. Thanks, everybody. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys taking the time to sign in and shoot your questions my way and listen to me ramble on about tanks. All right. Good night. We'll see you next time.